to the Room2Breathe Podcast, where we give ourselves permission to pause, heal, and grow without the pressures of having to have it all figured out. I'm your host, Life Coach 614, and today, I already know this is going to be special. Today, we are talking about healing, but not the cute, polished version. Today, we're going to talk about the messy, emotional, soul-shifting kind of healing. The kind that feels more like falling apart than becoming whole. Until one day you look up and you realize you've grown wings. And speaking of wings, today I'm sitting down with someone whose story is the definition of transformation. She's honest, she's powerful, she's vulnerable in the most freeing way. I couldn't imagine a more authentic voice to join us today. A woman whose name alone speaks transformation, whose work speaks truth, and whose presence is just pure soul. And instead of me trying to sum up all that she is, I'm going to let her tell you in her own words. ButterFLY English, welcome to the show, Queen. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Blessings, blessing, divine. Thank you so much for having me here with you today. And I'm excited about where we're going to take this conversation. Greetings, everyone. My name is ButterFLY English, and I am a motivational speaker, a life coach, and I am trained in dealing with childhood traumas, modality, and spiritual health healing. My journey into this passionate life that I'm living right now came at a cost of my own. And because of that, and because of having a mindset about therapy being scary, I decided that I needed to get involved in my own healing. And as we go forward, I'll kind of share with you why my name is ButterFLY English, because I've been through many years of metamorphic changes. I've been a butterfly over and over again. And so sit with us, take some time, delve in, listen, and I pray and I hold space for you that everything we share enlightens your heart.
Yes, thank you so much for being here today, Queen. I feel like you embody so much of what this podcast is about. You know, we are constantly talking about courage and softness, resilience, trust in the process, right? Even the ugly part that we tend to hide. So I'm excited today that we're going to move through a journey and that you'll have the opportunity to share your healing journey stage by stage, just like a butterfly, from the eggs to you getting your wings, right?
That part.
So I think the best way to sum this up, or for us to really get things going, is to just start from the very start, right? The awakening, or the egg, if you will. We know that the egg stage is subtle but powerful. It's where something inside of you begins to shift, and maybe nobody else noticed it, but you feel it, right? It's that quiet knowing that your current life can't hold the woman that you're becoming, right? So let's start there. Before you began your healing, what moment or whisper told you that something in your life needed to change?
It would be difficult to say one particularly, but it was a culmination of moments that kind of just blew up in my face that said, you know what, you need to wake up.
Yeah.
You are not living the life that you've been purposed to live. You're not showing the light that's within. It's clear it's in there because it's been struggling to get out for so many years. It's time for you to just stop living and actually be.
Absolutely.
So I think that the biggest catalyst for this awakening for me was going through some physical ailments that I had after being in a car accident. When I was in my 20s, I was hit by a fire engine. And I dealt with a lot of physical pain on my left side. I dealt with partial paralysis. I dealt with partial blindness. But throughout the entire journey, God had his hands on me, and there was a purpose for me. So there was at least 7 times in my lifetime that I was supposed to be gone. 7. And I said, you know what? That's a powerful number right there.
Absolutely.
7 times I faced death, and death was pushed away. So I said, there's no reason why I'm not doing what God desires for me to do, because that
Amen.
alone is a message in itself, right?
Absolutely.
So that kind of pushed me into it, and then realizing that pain wasn't going to be my story. I wasn't going to take the prescription everybody gave me, that you'll be paralyzed, you won't walk, you won't do this, you won't do that. And I finally said, you know what, I'm going to live.
Amen.
And I decided to start looking inward instead of outward for the healing, because the outward healing was just crippling me. It was holding me back. So inward was where my healing began.
Absolutely. That is definitely an awakening. And sadly, other people identify with this story, but they don't wake up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, those are the people who continuously run into the brick wall.
Yeah.
Or you ain't supposed to play in traffic, yet every morning you see them out there playing in traffic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where it's like, didn't
absolutely.
you learn the last time? So yeah, that definitely is, it is an awakening. Um, and I'm pretty sure that by the end of this, I feel that, once we make it through these 10 stages, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like your story is going to be an awakening for someone else.
I
Um,
hope so.
if nobody else, for me, because I told you I'm excited for this conversation today. Okay.
Well,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And even having the opportunity to share with you is still healing for me continuously,
yeah.
because I'm never, and we never are at a place of complete healing, right? We're
No,
constantly evolving, constantly growing, constantly changing, which is why butterfly, being metamorphic, going through that process, constantly evolving, constantly changing.
yeah. Yeah. Like I always say, I'll never be healed. I
Yeah,
will forever be healing. Like
that part.
ING. Like, it is an ongoing process that I welcome. I don't want to be healed, because then that tells you that there's nothing else for me to do. That means I'm
Yeah.
no longer here.
Yes, yes,
On
yes,
my tombstone, it'll say she was healed.
yes.
you
That
know,
part.
but
That
as
part.
long as I'm here and I have breath in my lungs, honey, I'm healing.
I
This is
know
a
that's right. I
process.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that rolls us right into stage 2, right? That caterpillar,
Mm-hmm.
the stage in life where we are all consuming and we are searching,
Yes.
right? Because after you wake up, you're hungry. So we think of that hungry caterpillar, right?
My gosh.
Because you like, hold on, I know a little better. I could do a little more than this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where we reach that season where we start soaking up everything around us, right?
Yes.
We start finding books, honey. So we done heard
The
some
thirst is
affirmations.
real, as they
Yeah,
say.
we get real thirsty, right?
Yes.
And so, I know you're gonna identify with this, because I swear we just talked about this. But them self-help videos start popping up at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We look for relief,
Yes.
for identity, and for anything that makes the pain make sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, we become the greatest WebMD over our bodies. And I know that the pain that I felt has to make sense, because, oh, I'm doing this. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
self-sabotaging. I have, um, what am I trying to think of? Imposter syndrome. You start learning and naming what you got going on. And I think
Right.
for me, this stage felt like, it almost felt like an overconsumption, right?
Yes.
And a spiritual burnout at the same time. Because,
Mm-hmm.
honey, if I can't figure it out, I'm going to God, right? If I ain't got the answers, Jesus, fix it.
That
King of
part.
Kings, take the wheel. Whatever you got to do, but make it plain
That
for
part.
me.
That
Dumb
part.
it down for me, right?
There's
So,
something that you're hitting there when you said that second part, that caterpillar, right? That hunger, that thirst. It
mm-hmm,
it comes from the desire, right?
mm-hmm,
Because you know there's better.
yeah,
But you got to be strong enough, because you know it's not going to be an easy journey.
right,
Because once you're suffering, and then you come into a place of knowing, and you understand that, you know what, in order to get to where I feel like I'm supposed to be, I got to be strong enough. So I've got to seek out the knowledge that I need, right? So
right,
then you become this sponge of wealth of knowledge, where you want it from this source and that source and this source and that source. And you may even ask or inquire from the wrong source. But all of that information comes in, right? And
right.
that's where we develop that gift, which we call discernment,
Mm,
right? We have to allow the information to flow in. but we have to also be wise enough to discern what's for us, right? And
Right.
then what portion of it's not for us, and just go ahead and discard that information. But the
Exactly.
parts that are for us, we set them aside and we say, okay, now I've got this wealth of knowledge. Let me put this right here. So when I get the rest of it to put this piece to this puzzle together, then I'm going to know how to walk this out, right?
Absolutely.
So when you're gathering, when you're eating, as the caterpillar does, you're going over to resources and you're like, you know what, this is beautiful. This looks like it may be empowering to me.
Exactly.
So let me partake in this vessel right here, right? And
Exactly.
so then I see something else that catches my eye, and for whatever reason, I need to partake in that moment as well.
Hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong. In that phase, you know how with eating anything, we got certain taste buds in our mouth, right? So
Amen.
everything that we try to consume during that period of time is not always good for us,
Exactly.
right? So, that's when we kind of figure out, well, am I consuming for growth for my spiritual walk? Or is my consumption out of habit, habitual habit and greed?
Right.
Okay. Am I just being gluttonous because something's there for me
Oh
to
my
have?
God. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I've seen that happen in my life and how it played out, where there were things that were just there. And then there were things like, well, you know,
Yeah. You're like,
why not?
meh.
Why
Right.
not?
Yeah. It's like whatever.
So when you invite that in, because it wasn't coming to you, you
Right.
invite that in because you feel like that's a part of your healing, right? You need to go on and do this, right?
Right.
Sometimes that's the most explosive situation that you have in your journey. But here's the thing. Explosive situations do nothing but burst that one little thing
Mm.
into 1,000 little pieces. And
Right.
you're able to see clearly now, because before it was a boulder blocking your way.
Yeah.
But when you have that explosive experience, everything now becomes clear. And it's almost like you have this visual 5D puzzle in front of you, and
Mm-hmm.
you get to pick pieces and
Yeah.
say, you know what? I got some love from this situation. So let me go ahead and pull that in here, right? I got
Yes.
some respect from this situation. So let me pull that piece back on here. And then
Mm-hmm.
I get to pull these pieces and build my own protective rock, my own
Yeah.
boulder, right?
Right.
Because now these pieces that once were explosions of a whole rock that blocked me now become pieces that I pull together, the sources that I need, and
Yeah.
become a layer of protection for me,
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
I've learned the learning that need to be done, right?
Yeah.
So as a caterpillar, I believe that stage is so crucial, so critical to the survival of the butterfly, right?
Yes.
Because once you get to that next phase, if you haven't done that and you haven't moved that boulder out your way and you haven't gained all those pieces to store up with you in that next stage,
Right.
then we're going to have some problems.
Listen, it's a mess, right? Like it's like when you like you said, if you had multiple puzzles, right, that
Mm.
represent all the trauma, all the trials, all the
Yes,
years you've been on earth. And then it's like if you don't make it through stage 2, it's like somebody just took 10, 20, 30, however many years you've been here. They take all those puzzles and just dump them all in the middle of the floor and
uh,
tell you to figure them out.
that
You
part,
like how I'm supposed to do that?
that
What
part.
what I'm supposed to do with this?
And see,
At the end
that's
of the day,
where we
nothing
take
to do.
accountability, and that's when we learn ownership, right?
Yeah.
That's when we learn that I don't have to take what you dump.
Listen.
I get to actually say, you know what, I'm going to move that out my way because I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to put that on my back as a backpack and walk through this burdensome journey with
Right.
your stuff,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So, as a caterpillar, you're understanding that you're not eating the things that will keep you bound. You're eating the things that are surrounding you with positivity, the things that you'll need for
Mhm.
that light in that very dark space you're about to go to, because you know it's coming.
You
In
know.
order to get to that next level, you know you have got to go into that dark space.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So why not go in there with all the love and peace and protection and
Right.
guidance and light and energy that you could?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you started your journey, what were you hungry for?
Oh my gosh. I,
Like
I think
what were you
that
chasing?
I had
You
a
know what
misunderstanding of what peace was.
I mean?
So my thirst for peace was the greatest of all.
Okay.
And I can explain that to you in different ways, but peace embodies so much of what I needed when I first started this journey, because I was so confused and conflicted about who I was,
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing, and where I was at that particular time in my life. Was this it?
Right.
You know, was what I was doing my everything? So I needed peace so that I can make sense out of it all.
Right.
So that was what I sought most. And the only way that I was able to seek that was to be able to, once again, go within.
Right.
All of it starts with going within. And just as the caterpillar does, it eventually goes within,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
had to go within. Peace was my greatest. It was the greatest thing I sought. And I can tell you, I remember the moment that I got it. It wasn't immediate.
Oh
And be
yeah.
careful what you pray for.
Whew.
Because when you pray for something, you got to go through whatever it is of the opposite to get to the positive, right? So I
Yeah.
had to go through some turbulent moments to understand what peace really looked like and what it represented for me.
Yeah.
So I remember going through those moments, and I mean, oh my goodness, they was rocky and rolly, and I was like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting off the ride, please let me get off the ride. But nobody would stop the doggone ride. They were like, girl, you done paid for the ticket, you got to ride. So I'm just
Listen.
like, well, I made this choice to get on this sucker. I didn't read the fine print that said I can't get off when I want to. So
Right.
I had to realize how to get the ride to stop and let me off. Right.
Mm.
And what that was me actually going within, once again, understanding the mechanics of it all
Yeah.
and realizing that, hey, I can control this
Yeah.
ride right here by saying, peace be still,
Amen.
peace be still. And
Yeah.
when I said, peace be still, the ride began to slow down. And as the ride slowed down, I was able to see things that I had been traveling past the entire time, round and round and round.
Right.
And I was like, wow. So eventually, when it came to a stop, there was no question in my mind, once I got off that ride, which way I was going to go first.
Mm.
Because I had so many opportunities to see it go by me. So now I knew how to seek it out. And that's what happened.
Yeah. That's so crazy because not crazy. Beautiful.
I know
Right.
what you mean.
But like it's crazy because we know that there's so much that goes into the search, right? We know that. And for me, knowing that we were just at the, the consuming and the searching, and so you were searching for peace, but you said when you found it, all of a sudden, like it's like you're in the middle of chaos, then you learn to find peace in your chaos,
Mm-hmm.
but then you realize just because you find peace, the chaos doesn't stop. And that literally is the third stage where you hit those growing pains,
Yeah.
right? You start shedding the old beliefs. And
Yeah.
so eventually, all that consuming that you've done starts to shift into clarity, which is where you
Mm-hmm.
shift and finding your peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't come without tension, right?
Yeah.
You still have to bump in, bump into like the old things, because the chaos doesn't cease.
Right.
Peace just gets louder, right?
Right.
But you start bumping up against old beliefs about yourself, about your love, about what you deserve, right? That's when the imposter syndrome starts to kind of show up on you a little bit.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, it starts to crack. And this is where we reach that uncomfortable part of the healing, or, it's kind of like where you start to stretch out, like you start to get comfortable in this new environment,
Mm-hmm.
but you recognize that there's so much of the old environment that is still here that you
Yes.
have to work through
Yes.
before you can get to the real growth of it. And
Yes.
so for you, what is one belief that you had about healing or maybe even self-worth that you had to unlearn?
I had to unlearn the fact that I thought healing could be pretty.
Mm.
I actually thought it could be pretty. And it's because it could be packaged so sweet with the
Mm-hmm.
bandage. They make the bandages now for kids with beautiful colors and rainbows and,
Absolutely.
everything's just so pretty. So why wouldn't healing be pretty for me, right?
Right.
But when I realized that it's not pretty at all, it wasn't pretty at all. Very, it was very fine tuned to the point where it was almost custom made for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I actually decided to part the seeds and see what it was all about, I realized, guess what? It ain't just puzzle pieces we working with, sister girl. We working with a whole array of masks over here. We
Mm-hmm.
got to figure out where these masks came from, who gave us this identity, when we chose to put this mask on and what that represented. So I'm over here not only trying to figure out the little small puzzle pieces to put this stuff together, but I'm over here looking at all these masks in my closet. I'm like, well, dang, you
Right.
know,
Right.
how could you possibly have peace when you got so much confusion around you?
Right.
So then I have to sit there and I'm thinking to myself, so this mask right here, I don't quite recognize it.
Mm.
I don't know where it came from. I don't know when I got it.
Mm.
So then I have to pick that off my shelf in my closet and take a little bit more of a closer assessment of it. And I have to look at that mask and I have to see, is this something that I chose to put on? Is this mask something I chose to put on because it was
Mm-hmm.
a protective layer? Or is this
Mm.
mask something that was put on me because it was a
Ooh.
deflective layer?
Whoo, girl,
So
listen,
then
that
I
was a
have
whole
to,
word right there. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm gonna need you to say that again for the people in the back, sis, because I just got chills. Back it up. Say that for me again.
I'm just saying, the masks that we put on, are we choosing to put them on because they are, in fact, a reflection of what's going on inside? Or are they a deflection of what someone else gave us to put on?
Mm,
Because
girl.
their weight of their journey, if they never took time to look at why they felt the weight of the journey, because a journey shouldn't be heavy. A
Yeah.
journey should be light. It should be like a picnic, walking through the park, singing
Exactly.
songs and holding hands and let the bluebird just sing on your
Oh,
shoulder, right?
kumbaya,
It's
right?
just a
Like, oh, kumbaya.
kumbaya moment.
Yeah,
But you walking
it's
through
not.
life heavy and you wondering why you ain't took the time. So what you do instead of taking the time for your own healing, you
Mm-hmm.
take and you put that deflection on someone else. And it's an overbearing of amount of deflection that becomes a new mask for that person.
Mm.
So when this new mask that I took out my closet and I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, well, dang on it. Well, I'll be dang. I got this mask and I didn't even buy the damn thing. Somebody gave it to me. Somebody put their shit in my closet.
Yeah, you're
You
right.
see what I'm saying? And here I
Exactly.
am walking around with the mask on at moments thinking, well, shit, my shit don't stink. Well, yeah, it does because it ain't my shit.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying to you? So then I
Exactly.
have to realize, well, do I want to keep this mask or do I want to figure out the whys behind the mask?
Right.
Or
Came from.
do I want to accept the fact that I accepted the deflection from someone else and walked around with it almost the majority of my life, believing that that truth was
Mm,
my truth, when in
girl.
fact it had nothing to do with me. So then it comes into a point with understanding that that mask no longer serves me.
Yeah.
So I put that mask to the side for trash, burn, and discard. Don't
Yeah.
donate it. Don't give it to somebody else. You burn
Lord.
it and you discard it.
Yeah,
But
because
then
that's how
there's a
you got.
whole lot of other masks in there, baby. We got to go through.
Yeah. Like this big dysfunctional craft room where you're like, it didn't look like this a minute ago. Like, where did this shit come from?
Right.
Whose is this? You
Right.
know what I mean? And
Right.
yeah, and stage 4, right? We didn't slid into the isolation and the darkness inside
Come
of
on.
this cocoon,
Come
right?
on.
And so I call this step the sacred undoing, right?
Mm,
The cocoon.
mm-hmm.
Because this stage is so misunderstood.
Uh,
From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening.
Right.
But honey, on the inside, everything is dissolving. It is reforming, and all of a sudden you recognize it's not pretty. This is
Honey.
the ugliest, dirtiest, most effed up phase of all of the healing. And it hurts,
Yes.
right? And it's like you said, you have to sort through the mess. You can't ignore it anymore
Mm-mm.
because you know better. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it's like now you know better. You're hungry. You had a taste
Yes.
of the peace and the good life, and you
Mm-hmm.
know that once you're in this space and you start to see all this shit, you like, okay, ain't nothing peaceful about this. We got to clean this up
That part.
because you know that there's a calling. Like you started to recognize there's something more, right?
But you gotta
And so
understand, sweetie, once that explosion happens, that piece is no longer what it was representing before because that boulder was peace because it was solid.
yeah,
It was solid. It looked like peace. But
it was
then
a
when
piece.
it burst
It was a
and all
piece.
those pieces, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You realize that's not my piece.
exactly. But it felt good. It's like, I don't know if y'all have Sam's Club there,
Mhm.
but it's like when you go to Sam's Club on Saturday and they give you a little piece of it.
Yes.
And you like, I really like this, but then you get home and you eat too much and you like, it's not as good as it was when I was there.
Yes.
And that's what it is. You found the piece. So you
Yes.
got a little taste. You got
That's
a
it.
piece. You got a piece of peace, right?
That's it. That's all.
And you realize, okay, once that's taken away because there are no more pieces, you broke it up,
Mhm.
right? So now you have to figure out, how do I get back to the peace? Well,
Yes.
I got to go through all these pieces.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's like, just like you talked about the puzzle. I got to go through all these pieces, all these masks, all these layers, and all of this
Yes.
thing so I can find my peace
Yes.
because I've had a taste of it and I
Girl.
want more.
The thing about peace is it's so unmatched,
Mm.
right? And what brings me peace may not bring you peace.
Amen.
So it's completely unmatched. But my peace is is great for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So while I'm in this cocoon, I have to rest assured in the understanding that my peace will abide and bring me through.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But remember when we were out there harvesting as that caterpillar, what we were doing was we were storing up and we were taking the good and bringing it with us, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we went into that cocoon phase, we going in there and we understand that we're getting it together. We
Yeah.
understand that it's going to be painful, but we're putting all the little comfortable things around us to comfort us
Right.
that we need, right? We're putting
Right.
that love in place. We're putting that respect in. We're putting all the things that we chose from the explosion to put in there with us, right?
Yeah.
Because we know we got to go through it.
Right.
So after I've come out of my closet and I'm looking and I'm going through the inventory of my mask, right? And I'm realizing the pain that I've been carrying along for so long willfully, right? That
Mm-hmm.
I'm now having to understand that I have to go into that period of isolation because I can't heal in a group setting. I can't heal around the people who harmed me. I can't heal around the people who triggered me. I
Yeah.
can't heal. And
Yeah.
because healing is so important to me, it's a necessary on this journey. I have
Right.
to make the hard choices to separate myself from those that I love or
Exactly.
that love me, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that isolation period looks simple to me as I prepare for it, but I have no idea what's about to happen to me.
Yeah. So
So,
do you remember? And the funny thing about this whole evolution of the butterfly,
mhm,
you touched on this. It doesn't happen once,
right.
right? You I think mentioned to me at some point seven times
Hmm.
or something, but the number varies person by person and where you are in your life.
Yes.
Hell, some of us have probably evolved 70 times
Yeah.
over the years. um so when you think of one of your cocoon seasons, right?
Hmm.
What did it look and feel like when everything felt like it was falling apart?
Oh, Jesus. Whew. I've had some of those moments during this journey, this particular season, that have probably made me feel like I wanted to give up on everything and anything and everybody,
Mm.
to the point where even the light that would never go out inside of me was still burning bright and wanting to come out. I was demanding it to shut down.
Mm.
I was demanding it to not force me to grow and heal. I was demanding it to not put me back through another period of this same mess again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was as if I said to myself, why? And there were so many lessons that come with those whys, because I really am a firm believer that you only repeat history if you haven't learned the lesson the first time around. So I had to understand that I'm doing this too many times here.
Right.
I need to figure out the recipe, that, if it's a scientific experiment, I need to know how to move,
Like,
because
stop
I
the
can't do
car.
it no more.
Stop the car. Let me out. I don't want
Let
to
me
be
out.
here.
Let me
Right.
out. Because when you go from being in a position that others look at, and excuse me if I sound boastful in this moment, but I don't intend to be, but others seem to be envious of,
Mm-hmm.
because I had the representation of what the Black successful marriage looked like. I had the representation of what the Black successful family looked like. I
Mm-hmm.
had the homes in the suburbs, the cars, the trips. I've had the jewelry, the bags. I've had those things, right? So when you have that, and then all of a sudden your life takes a turn and no one can understand what went on, right? But you know what you're preparing for. You're preparing for healing. You're preparing for growth. You're preparing for a new set of wings that you have no idea what color they're going to be this time, because they ain't going at this time. They could be whatever, all the colors
Right.
of the rainbow,
Right.
So it's going to be just as much a surprise to me as it is to anyone else when I come up out this cocoon this time,
Right.
right? But people don't understand that, and you can't explain that to them. So
Yeah.
then while you're inside the cocoon and you're being just torn up and broke down and dealing with the pain and the heartbreak and all of it as it comes, you got people on the outside of the cocoon touching it, trying to figure out, well, why is she in there? What is she
Right.
doing? How hard is this shell on the outside that she can't get out? What's going on? They can't understand you in that cocoon metamorphosizing into something more beautiful than what you were before. So they just look at you.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so that makes, because we're not officially inside cocoon where we can't see,
Right.
that makes that human butterfly experience a little bit more difficult,
Mm-hmm.
because you've got these people wanting you to give them answers, or wanting you to perform or act a certain way because of what they're accustomed to.
Right.
But inside of the cocoon, I'm rewriting the whole program. God's rewriting the whole script. Spirit's
Right.
telling me all different type of stuff. Downloads are coming in and out.
Right.
Right. So I'm at peace,
Yeah.
because I know the storm won't last forever, because I done been through it before.
Yeah.
I know that once I come out this cocoon, glory to God. You
Right.
hear me? So
Yeah.
you can't, once you do it so many times, you realize that you can't go into your cocooning stage or your isolation stage and fear it.
Mm.
You can't fear it, because then you're going to lose the lesson and the blessing, right?
Yeah.
So when I know because I know nothing is forever. I know I'm not going to constantly stay on this, right? So I
Right.
know that eventually, as the human butterfly that I could proclaim to be, I will once again cocoon again,
Yeah.
right? So now my cocooning phases are so much more peaceful, and they're not as lengthy, because I'm in there like, what's going on? What do I
Right.
need? How
You
can I
ready?
find this?
Ready. Yeah.
Because I'm just growing more and more. And you, being the light that you are, have poured into me so immensely and so deeply just in this short period of time that we've known one another. It has been a motivational point in my life for me. And I want to thank you for that. Because right now you're visiting me inside of a cocoon, if you know it or not. So you stop by with some nourishment for a sister.
Yeah.
Making sure that I'm eating and drinking and making sure that I'm well until
Right.
I come out of my cocoon. So I thank you for coming by and visiting and checking on me.
Yes, girl. Listen, I'm so happy to do that because, I constantly, you know how it is being a life coach, So it's like we are constantly filling everybody else's cup up.
Yes.
But we have to work 5 times as hard to make sure our cup is full, because if our cup is not overflowing, we have nothing to give.
That part.
Because we've evolved so much. We're past the phase of letting our cup run empty.
Yes.
Because we know that there's nothing to give. But I understand that not everybody knows that.
Yes.
Right? Because we meet people at all different phases. We meet people that may be 20, 30, 40 years old, and this is their first evolution. You see what I mean?
Very much so.
It's their first evolution.
And they're scared.
Yes.
See, we said that at the same exact time because you know what we vibe and says they are scared.
Yeah.
Because they don't know that on the other side of this isolated period that there is power that just is radiating from them when they come through it. You just got to get through it. You got to believe that this self-care club, okay, and the moments for your room to breathe are for you to heal.
Exactly.
You feel me?
Yeah, and the thing that I've noticed since being a life coach is that I meet people and they are, you have this vision as a life coach that everybody's at level 1.
Yeah.
You think that all your clients are eggs. Okay. And you recognize this client is at stage 7. And you're like, well, hold on, baby. We got to go back and talk about some of these other stages.
Yes.
Because, it's like, okay, level 5, right? Stage 5, that mirror moment. So if you've missed out on stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 because you didn't know what it was, you was just living life, living your best life. Your
best life,
right? In all its toxic glory, but you're actually at that mirror moment, right? And and so many of us go through that where we don't even realize we've already made it 4 levels and we're at the 5th level. So we halfway done. We at the halfway point.
Yeah.
But now that mirror moment, when that shadow work start happening, you want to quit.
Girl.
You are like, pardon me, fuck this. I don't want this. You can keep your healing. It's like, I don't want to do this because there's so much that happens, and sometimes in that cocoon, I think the hardest thing that you have to do during your healing, it happens within the cocoon because you have to face yourself. You have to face yourself so deeply and you want to run or disappear or quit, and so that's why I call this the mirror moment because, honey, it ain't nobody but you and your reflection. And, when you're sorting through this stuff, because that cocoon get tight. When you start breaking stuff down, honey, you ain't got no room to breathe. So you are trying to discard things to make room to breathe, right? And for me, I know when I hit that stage, when I really came into like my mirror phase, I had to obviously confront some traumas and things like that. But it wasn't the trauma that hurt me because that damage was already done, right?
Yeah.
The part that was hardest for me was the adult me now understanding it, like seeing it as a grown person.
Yeah.
Right. And recognizing that, this pattern of bad behavior or this situation, how it was never for me. Like it was never meant for me to win that. You know what I mean? And so to know that you've started a history of bad behavior.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, let's say there's a young lady and she, as a teen, she's promiscuous, right? And so she's just giving herself away, not even realizing how valuable it is. So she's giving herself away. And then that relationship ends. So then she's with the next person and she's giving herself away. And of course, society is judging her. they're slut shaming her and all of this. And this girl is simply looking for love in all the wrong places. So
Yeah.
now this girl, fast forward, she's a grown woman, she's married, right? So now she's in a healthy relationship, but
Mm.
it is dysfunctional to her because it is calm, it is peaceful, it is love, it is all the things that she's been looking for, but she's been conditioned to settle for less. You know what I
So
mean?
in that scenario you just presented, you picked up from when she became sexually active, right?
Mm-hmm.
So me, the type of counseling that would the questions that immediately came to my mind was, at such a young age, why are you promiscuous?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I want to know what happened in the earlier stages of your development that would cause you to feel less than
Yeah.
or unworthy of holding yourself to another standard, right?
Mhm.
So that's where my type of therapy comes in, that when I deal with my clients, I want to know what broke you in the first place.
Yeah.
And I want to know if you know what broke you in the first place and how we can get there and get you to talk to that little kid, that little child, that little boy, that little girl in you that didn't know how to use their voice, right?
Right.
Didn't know how or if they could use their hands, or
Right.
if at all that their body was even their own at some point for
Right.
whatever reason, right? So that's the child, that's the adult child that I want to, talk to, because I could feel like if you can figure out, because at teenage years, if you only start there, this is my thing, and I ask you, to go a little further with me on it. If you
Mhm.
start at the teenage years and you move forward, after being promiscuous, right? And you get into this relationship that's
Right.
good, that's good,
Right.
right?
Right.
Is it though? Is it though? Because are you
Yeah.
coming into it whole? Are you coming into it with resolving your past traumas and pain? Or are you
Yeah. A whole
coming into
mess.
it 75% healed, but that other 25%, you are still a victim?
Yeah.
And that victim mentality holds you into something sometimes that you don't even need to be in,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So
And I
that's
think that,
that's why I feel like if you really want to get to the root of the evil, you got to deal with that little kid, that little boy, that little girl that lost their voice. Who took your voice away from you?
yeah.
You
It's
know?
like it's that question like who hurt you?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that I see. And I gave that scenario because that is so many women's stories.
Yes.
And again, okay, we made it back to the teenager because
Yeah.
we got to unpack some things. So it's like now we made it back to the teenager, but now
Hmm.
that teenager, when you in your teenage days, you are defiant, honey.
Yes.
You can't nobody tell you nothing because you know it all, right?
Hmm.
And like they say, you got your degree and you know every fucking thing when you a
Yeah.
teenager, right? So, but it's like once you break through to that teenager and you have that aha moment, you recognize that was the 7-year-old girl who was violated.
Yeah.
And so now as a teenager you think, well, they done already took it,
Yeah.
so what am I saving it for?
Yeah.
Because and so if you don't have someone pouring into you, and how can they pour into you, right? Because you haven't shared this, so it's like if you were violated as a child, which sadly many women are,
Hmm.
especially in our
And men.
community,
And men.
and men too. So I'll say
Mhm.
many people are
Yeah.
within our community, right? And so with that, you have been exposed. Whether it was done to you, whether you witnessed it being done, you have now been exposed.
Hmm.
So now you, as a child, you don't feel worthy.
Mm.
You don't feel like there's anything worth saving. And for
Mm.
some people, it works the opposite, right? Some
Right.
people recognize, oh, see, you took it, ain't nobody else gonna ever take it from me again. So,
Right.
it does affect us all differently. But I
Right.
feel like the common thing when I meet people is I meet them and they recognize, hey, this was a problem, but they have suppressed
Hmm.
that part because that was the part where they felt like they had the least control. And
Yeah.
when
And you
I
have to.
had to meet my 7-year-old girl, honey, listen, she showed up and she was like, shit. We ain't had no control then, but we got all the power now. And
Yeah.
like you had to educate me to say we might not have had a voice then. We
Mm-hmm.
might not have known better then, but we know better now. Like, we're not finna keep secrets. We're not
Yeah.
finna do all of this. And so that's why, again, it's that mirror moment. It's
Yeah.
that moment where you block out everything else and you have to say, you know what? I'm here. I'm still standing.
Mm-hmm.
And that shit happened.
Yeah.
And it's not happening, so it's like some people think, oh, well, it happened, but you got to get over it.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
I'm trying, but it
No.
doesn't work that way. It
No.
sounds good. It's like that, like it sounds good. It
Yeah.
looks good. But in this cocoon, it keeps happening to me.
Yes. Yes.
It's happening again and again.
Yes.
So I'm curious with you, was there a point where you and I'm asking this, and I feel like it's such a rhetorical question because we are too much the same. So
Mm-hmm.
I already know the answer to this question, but I'm asking you for the people. Okay.
Okay.
Was there a point where you just honestly just almost gave up, right? And we know the answer is yes, because we all have this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in explaining, what you wish to explain as far as this point where, or maybe one of the points, if you like me, honey, which point you want me to talk about?
Multiple.
Right.
Yeah.
So, when you almost give up, I don't necessarily want to focus so much on the problem of when you almost gave up, but what helped you hold on? Because you still standing. So I want to talk about that Antoine Fisher moment where you recognize, oh, I almost gave up. I almost throw in the towel, but baby, I'm still standing. What did that
That
look like?
moment for me came at a wow. When they say it, when it rains, it pours type of thing, that was my experience in those moments for me. At the time that the moment began to show itself, I was actually a host on Bigo Live.
Okay.
And I was also a gifter on Bigo Live, and I had a charity and I had a business.
Mm-hmm.
Being a Black woman, wanting to just invest in my community, believe in the women and things like that. I did some things financially for people and hired some people from the app to do some things for me. And I fell in love with someone on the app. Mm. And it all just, I don't know. I didn't have a good experience. Let's just say that. I lost all my money. I was robbed. I was cheated. I was scammed. Close to $500,000. Lost my cars. Lost my house, my apartment that I was living in. Sold all my purses, all my jewelry. I was going to survive regardless. So I was pawning, selling everything down to I had nothing. Yeah. And ended up living in an extended stay. But still determined to figure out something, right? So I'm getting assistance from people helping me with this. People are showing up, and I was, though, in that moment, you can't even understand the gratitude that I experienced because they were showing up for me. Had it not been, I would have been on a park bench. But I felt like I could get no lower. This was my breaking point, literally, because here I come from being a suburban housewife with a husband who's management corporate America, driving, a brand new car every 2 to 3. I'm about to be on a bench.
Yeah.
Because I love and I give, and I had to figure out what the hell is going on with you that you can't put you first, make sure you're okay first, but you will pour out and make sure someone else is okay. That was that lesson for me.
Yeah.
Because becoming destitute, having to stand extended stay, having to sell all your things, eventually staying with someone that you thought loved you and it didn't work out. And you're basically now living in a U-Haul, driving across country at 58, 59 years old. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What was there to live for at this point? What was there to fight for at this point? At 58, 59, nothing. Nothing. And about to be arrested for having a U-Haul truck over the period of time because my credit card wasn't going to pay for the extra time. But I didn't care because all my stuff was in the U-Haul. My life was in that U-Haul.
Yeah.
Tell me about crippling moments. And that was only one of them in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I had to figure it out. And what kept me pushing was the faces of my beautiful, beautiful 8 grandchildren. And the fact that I said there will be nothing that keeps me from fulfilling God's purpose on my life because He's brought me just too far.
Amen.
I have come through the storms and the mountains and the shadows of the valley of the death that you could never, ever imagine. But I'm still standing. And the fact that I was living in a U-Haul truck, driving from one state to the next and still was able to smile because God said, I got you in the midst of everything. Just hold on a little while longer.
Right. Just hold on.
Just hold on.
Yeah.
And He's still working it out for me. Don't get it twisted. Because we're just talking, we're just a few months into having a place over my head. Okay, so let's just be real. But I don't live in a mindset of lack.
Yeah.
Because I know what was for me, like you said, will be for me.
Absolutely.
I have no other fear in my mind about it. I just had to go through it. What this taught me, maybe, was to sustain life within first.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking financial, I'm talking spiritually, okay? Loving myself on all levels, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And then being able, once the abundance is there, then being able to say yes.
Yeah.
Taught me a lot about the word no.
Oh, listen, I feel like once you hit that rock bottom, whichever rock bottom, because there's so many levels to it, right? It's like you start to realize where you've seeked all this external validation.
Yeah.
Where it's like you think you love yourself because you take care of yourself. You make sure you look good, right? We package this mess up real
so good.
So pretty, right?
So good.
But on the inside, there's so much. Like there's so much happening, so much going on. And then it's like all of a sudden you realize I've been giving my power away. Like I'm seeking love from someone else because I don't want to face the fact that I don't even love myself. I thought I did, but I don't love myself. And I don't love myself enough to protect myself, to provide for myself, because I'm too busy chasing this person, pouring into this person, worried about this person, you know, and along the way, I'm losing this person, you know.
But where do you think that came from, though? Because it's like I know that spirit was on me that I need to buy love. I know that spirit was on me that I wasn't worthy of anything unless I was doing or giving something.
Yeah.
You know, my identity was enthralled in that.
Yeah.
And so when I share with you about being in this cocoon and people on the outside knocking like, what the hell's going on? Where are you? It was like, you couldn't understand because I'm no longer readily available. I'm no longer the one to pick up the phone and I'm going to send it. I'm no longer the one that's going to show up. I'm no longer the one that's there. Right? I was the auntie and the godmommy for everybody. I wasn't nothing that Auntie Karma I wouldn't do.
Right.
See? So when my life went down, it made no sense to anyone else, but they didn't know how to reach out and help me because they couldn't understand it. So I believe you and I had a conversation before about the look of what nervous breakdowns disguise, right? So I think a lot of people not understanding how I could go from this to that immediately put into my storyline that I was a drug addict. So that's when someone else trying to give me a mask to wear, right? And so, she must be on drugs or she must be doing this, not wanting to know, but just giving me their no, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at that point was when I realized, thank God you gave me the strength to go through those masks and understand that I don't have to put it on if I don't want to.
Yeah. You don't have to
So I
identify.
didn't have to put it on. I didn't have to, and I didn't have to explain it to anybody. I just let people's narrative be their own, because me saying something, you're not going to change a thing about what you think about me.
Yeah.
So, yin yang, 50-50.
Yeah. It's kind of like what Eminem say, I am whatever you say I am. Because if
Yeah.
I wasn't, then why would you say I am?
Yeah.
You know?
That part.
And I think that, that's when the shift, we start to kind of shift into like that next phase, and we don't even know it. Because that next phase is quiet. Because everything else that has happened up to this point has happened very loudly.
Yes.
That is why you are starting to get opinions and perceptions from other people, because they're starting to recognize something's happening. But more importantly, it's what's happening internally. It's holy, right? And so you, at this point, you start to realize I'm not broken. Just because that's your perception of me, that's not who I am. You say I'm this, but you let me back up for a sec. You asked the question, where did it come from? And it's society. But it is a learned behavior, because we have been conditioned to think that when a person has it all, right? That whatever has it all is. I don't even know what that looks like. When a person has it all, honey, and then they fall off, everybody immediately say he on drugs. He addicted to something. He doing this. If the relationship fall apart, somebody cheated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like everybody gets this mentality of
their
how
narrative.
So it's a learned behavior, and I blame social media. And listen, I love social media. I make a living from social media, but it is literally a gift and a curse. And if you don't know how to use it, if you're not a person who's confident and can recognize that you've gone through so many stages of life, you start to subscribe to it, because social media glorifies toxicity. Look at the Real Housewives of whoever, right? Somebody's thing. It glorifies the ugly, and so it makes people laugh at it. It makes people villainize people. It makes us cancel culture, right? It makes us do all of these things because we don't realize how many things we've subscribed to. And I'm not talking about Netflix and Hulu and whatever. I'm talking about how many toxic narratives that we have pressed subscribe on because we like to watch other people's mess. Not realizing that shit just got on us. We trying to figure out, I just cleaned up in here, but it smelled like boo-boo. That's because you done picked up everybody else's shit. You done stepped in everybody else's shit. And now it's on you and you can't get it off of you.
Yeah. I used to tell people all the time, I don't subscribe to that channel. Like, I don't subscribe to your mental attacks of me. I don't subscribe to your beliefs of me, because that would mean that I actually agree with you.
Exactly.
And so I'm not paying for a subscription for someone to tear me down or make me feel less than. That would just be idiotic, right? And so in that period of time we were just talking about, I had to go through relationships and go through and say, unsubscribe,
return to sender.
For whatever, for whatever reason,
return to sender. No forwarding address exists.
That's it. That's it.
I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm not paying for it.
That's it.
It's free. I still don't want it.
That's it. That's it. Seriously, because at some point, if you don't start weeding out the things that were always lingering, you're going to, like I said, you're doomed to continue to repeat these lessons, these cocooning periods of life, right?
Yeah.
Because you just won't allow yourself to understand what is going on around and what relevance the individuals that you keep allowing to play part in your story.
That's big, especially at this phase, because with a rebirth, if you're not careful, because the rebirth is going to happen whether you want it to or not, right? Yeah. So there's no turning back at this phase. But if you're not careful, you're going to literally be born into the same bullshit again. So this is a very pivotal part. And so for you, when did you first realize that old version of you was gone and that you were not going back?
Wow. That's funny you said that. Remember I told you was going through some things that I wanted to share with you, a couple of them. That particular reference you made, I wrote, give me a second.
Yeah, no
And we
problem.
may have to pause for a bathroom break in a minute, but give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Um, I meant to talk to you when we were talking about some of the pain things, to talk about how siblings can experience different childhoods, right? And have a different
Mhm.
narrative of the home that they grew up in. And that can cause a lot of conflict as well, because that one child's experience could have been detrimental to how they now act. And the other doesn't have that experience and they think, "Ooh, well, what's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
But your experience will never be the same. I said once in this book here, and this makes a lot of sense. It says, once you're born, it's a shared experience with the host. The infection of the immediate is usually immediate once you're born. So, say you're born to a toxic environment, toxic family, right? You
Hmm.
are immediately affected with toxic energy,
Right.
right? So, your pain begins right there on the onset of taking your very first breath,
Yeah.
right? So, and we don't know how to separate ourselves from it. So, there's always an incubation period for the fast growing infection.
Mhm.
So if you're around that infection from birth to 5 years, when you start engaging and learning to speak your will, that's when you see if kids are toxic or not.
Yeah.
That's when you see if people are racist or not, right?
Yeah.
Because that incubation period is now shown up in that 5-year-old person,
Mhm.
right? But that was something I wanted to tell you. And I was sitting here about, I'm not going to put the person's name in it, but the pain donor, which is a conditional system left undiagnosed, ignored, or oversighted, has a skilled practice focus when making sure the pain transfer is complete and has begun in its stigmatic existence.
Mm.
So that pain donor, if they're abuser,
Mhm.
any of those we listed, right?
Right.
They want that pain to be reflective. They want to see it show up some way. Otherwise, they didn't do the job right.
Right.
They need somebody to look and feel the way they felt all their life, right?
Right.
So you got to be careful about them pain donors. But I can't find it, baby. Maybe it's something we can put in there later. It
Yeah.
was something about that. I got
And to
so much
touch on
stuff.
what you just said too, it's so crazy because the abusers, right? They stick around long enough to make sure the job is done.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like and they don't want to do it. They don't want to kill you. It's not to end you. It's just to make sure that you know I did that to you. Like they
yeah.
want the satisfaction of saying I'm the one that hurt you. I'm the one that broke you.
And then
Because
they want to watch you with your slow death because they've been
yeah,
dying slowly all their lives because of
yeah.
whomever did it to them,
Or even
right?
what about the ones that even know, oh, she's gonna survive this because they
Mm-hmm.
recognize you're strong. They like the
Mm-hmm.
challenge, but they will hold on just long enough to be the part of your story because they'll settle for any part of your
Yes,
story because they know they're not gonna win with you. They know they're not worthy of it
yes.
because of who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they know that they can't win with you, but they know that there's still a chapter in that book.
Yes,
So when you write that book, when you tell your story, they know that they're back in chapter 3. And that's enough for them. Right? And that was for me the point where I was just I think that was probably one of my no turning back moments. When
mm-hmm.
I was like, this fool will stick around long enough to make sure they are in the damn credits.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and it's like that's the point where you start to recognize if I don't, it's like I need to learn the lesson,
Mhm.
but I don't need to give you credit for the lesson.
Right,
You see what I'm saying? Because at the end of the
right.
day, it is what it is. Like you said, when the child is born, they're born into certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a certain stage in that child's life where they make the shift. Just
Yes,
because a child is born into a racist household doesn't
yes.
necessarily mean that child is going to be racist.
Correct.
They either normalize it and identify with it, or they reject it.
Yes.
You see what I'm
Because when you
saying?
have a strong will and your spirit is pure, you reject anything that's going to be negative, right?
Yeah,
So it don't matter what environment you're raised up in, you will automatically just be a certain person that stands out. It's just because when God touches you, you just touch. You can't mess with the chosen ones. Period.
yeah,
I don't care where they came from, but whatever lesson was need to be learned so they can in fact operate in that vein that they need to be operating in when they get to a certain level of healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Listen, y'all, I'm not even gonna lie. This conversation with ButterFLY has been so deep and so layered and filled with soul. And if you're still here, just know I see you. But if we're being honest, there's no way we can fit all of this into one episode without rushing the healing. So we made the intentional choice at the last minute to break this into 2 parts because your growth deserves space, not speed. So make sure you give us a follow, subscribe to the channel, so that way you don't miss the rest of this powerful journey. I invite you to come back next Friday, May 2nd at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for part 2, where we will continue unfolding ButterFLY's evolution. We're going to talk about her release, her rising, and what reclaiming her truth really looked like on the other side of trauma. In the meantime, I invite you to stay connected with us. Head over to selfcareclub.org to tap into our full library of resources, including the Room2Breathe blog and original music created to support your healing. And if you're craving community, don't do this journey alone. Join our virtual self-care club where we have real conversations, sharing our wins and even our struggles, and growing through it together. You are not alone. You are not behind. And most importantly, you are not broken. You are simply becoming. This is Room to Breathe, and I can't wait to continue this with you next week. But until then, be gentle with yourself and don't be afraid to make a little room for you to breathe. I pray that today you have an amazing day on purpose, filled with nothing but purpose, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you. I found my room to breathe.